Hey everybody, it's Irene with BrainStormAcres, and today we're going to talk about direct seeding. Now, the other day I did a video talking about seeding with the intention of transplanting. And I said that there are some things the same and some things not the same. Well, the basic thing that's the same is the rules for that particular plant. Every seed packet, at least from any kind of company of decent renown, will have instructions on it about how to plant your seeds, how deep they should be planted, how far apart they should be planted, things like that. Now, these two pots are going to be the final resting place of these plants. In other words, I'm not going to transplant them and move them somewhere else. They're going to spend their entire lives here until they're harvested. Now, because they've been used before, the first thing I'm going to do is give them a little tune-up. Now, let me explain what I mean by that. When you have plants in a pot, they're going to consume nutrition. And a lot of times what I see is people go out, they buy plant food. The plant food will be like this. It's just a potting mix. I mean, plant food. They buy potting mix, and the potting mix will be something like this. And I get nothing from Miracle-Gro, believe me. I just spend a lot of money with them. And it says, grows plants twice as big, feeds up to 6 months, more blooms for more color. Okay, that sounds good. Does that mean I shouldn't fertilize for 6 months after I put my plants in there? Well, you could do that, but to be honest, I don't know what plant they're using as a guide. The problem with making a generalization like it grows plants this much bigger or that much better or that, whatever, is that every plant has its own needs in terms of nutrition. Well, we can make some generalizations. Certain plants need more nitrogen than others. Certain plants need more calcium than others. Through research, we can figure some of that out. But to be honest, I never trust what the potting soil people tell me, no matter what they are. I actually had a friend try, this is not organic, this particular potting soil, and I had a friend try the organic stuff the other day. It was her idea, not mine. And she said, wow, maybe it was her imagination, but didn't work half as well as the regular stuff. And I'm like, I don't know, because you'd have to do a real analysis of the contents of that bag to find out what would make it good or bad, and what would make it good or bad for your plant. But let me show you what I'm going to do. Okay, I have labels in here. This says Thai basil, this says Touchstone Gold, and this says Red Ace. What that means is this pot was previously used for Thai basil, and that's all it had in it. This pot was previously used for 2 different varieties of beets. Now, why is that important? When a plant is in a pot, it relies on that pot for everything that it has for nutrition. And therefore, it will literally use up certain types of nutrition that are in that pot. The same thing happens to some extent in the soil, but in the soil sometimes you have the ability to run farther out, farther deeper, farther out to the sides. Maybe some stuff will wash in. That doesn't happen with a pot. A pot is a self-contained thing. Now, why do I use plastic pots? I've had some people say, well, you shouldn't use plastic pots, you should use the bags. I decided several years ago not to use the bags where we live. Why? We are in high altitude Arizona, a very naturally dry climate. We're basically a high desert. We're about 50 to 80 feet above sea level, and our normal summer humidity level is about 10%, 15% maybe. Unless it's raining, we're that dry. So having something that will automatically let the moisture come out the sides, like those cloth or like woven PVC sort of bags and stuff that people like, the grow bags, they work awesome. I've got friends who've used them in places like Mississippi, South Carolina, you know, places like that. They work great because it's a naturally damp climate. Here, people I know who've tried them said they were awful. They couldn't keep the plants watered enough. They're cheap. That's why people like them. And when you're done with them, you fold them up and put them away, and you can just throw the dirt into your garden. But, and here, you know, you have to figure out how you're going to store these guys. My response to that is throw the dirt into the garden and nest these things, and you could stick 20 of these things in a spot that big. It'll just be tall, that's all. I chose these because they're 10 gallons. That means they're big enough to have real space for the roots, but they're not so big that I can't lift them myself. Now, when they've been freshly watered, they get pretty darn heavy, but I'm still capable of either sliding them or giving a good heft. I try not to create boxes and containers that I can't lift by myself. My husband is not always available, and some people don't have a spouse or a handy person to be able to lift things. So I try and choose things that will make sense for your average person on the block. So let's take a look at this. Like I said, these have both been used before, and this is what I'm going to do. You'll notice the soil is not up to the top. I have stirred up the top a little bit to make sure there's no crustiness to it. There's a random little leaf in there. Yes, Thai basil. I am going to add more potting soil because I do not want the level of my soil in my pot to get to be too low. Soil in a pot, or in a garden for that matter, is naturally going to be depleted. Crunch, 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 crunch. There we go. Soil in a pot or in a garden is going to naturally be depleted by the action of the bacteria in the soil. The worms are going to squish their way through and eat organic material in the pot or in the ground and poop it out. And that's where you get worm castings from. Really good nutrition. However, it means over time your soil is going to go down. The hotter it is, the more susceptible your soil is to that condition, because the greater heat encourages the bacteria and stuff to function faster. Now, what I have here is Haas organic fertilizer. Now, why Haas organic fertilizer? Well, I just got this brand new and I thought I'd opened it and I hadn't. So, anyway, the reason is it's a slow release fertilizer, and I like that. I want something that I'm going to put in there, and over weeks it is going to allow the nutrition to be accessible to the plant. And this stuff does a great job. I used to run a factory, and we had special machinery to seal the tops of our bottles. And all it took was somebody not paying total attention, and the machinery would be running too hot, and it would either melt something so that you could never get it open without a pair of pliers, or it wouldn't be hot enough and then it wouldn't seal correctly. I also never trust these types of bags once they have been opened, because there's a good chance they're going to dribble. It's not going to seal tight, especially with something heavy like this. I'm going to stick a good cup of this stuff in there. I'll do the same thing with this one. And yes, it smells like dry chicken manure, because it is. It's pelleted chicken manure. So it could be used immediately on your beds. You don't have to be concerned about it hurting. burning your stuff the way fresh chicken manure is, but because you can actually fry the roots on your plants with fresh chicken manure.
But I gotta stop moving from it. I gotta stop talking about it. The fan is gonna come on. Hopefully it's not too annoying. I turned it way up. But yeah. Okay. Noisy.
Every time I reuse a pot, this is what I do. I add more soil to it to make sure I raise the level of the soil back up to where it used to be. And I add organic fertilizer. Now these are ready to use. Honestly, when I start a pot for the first time, say these were brand new, I would do the same thing. I would fill it up. I would probably tamp this down a little. Now I know that sounds counterintuitive because there's all this conversation about keeping oxygen in the soil and stuff, but when you just pour in fluffy old potting soil mix, if you just pour it in casually and don't tamp it down at all, and I'm not talking about tamping it down with like a pole and stamping it in there, just sort of pushing it down a little with your hands. If you don't do something like that when you start your pot, it's going to shrink probably 3 or 4 inches as the water compresses in here. The soil will be compressed when the water, knocks out all the extra air. And it's not going to knock out all the air, but, takes a lot of it out. And all of a sudden you're way down here. It's not the end of the earth. The world will not end. It is nicer to start with a higher level. If you look at the pots I have around here of cabbages and things like that, the soil level is probably down around 1 inch or 2. A little bit farther on some. Some I didn't smush hard enough. Some of them have just naturally, the soil's been consumed by the process of allowing the plants to grow. But if I start with the soil sort of shallow, then I'm going to constrict the growing area that my plants have. You see how these lettuce are flopping over the edge? If I started with that dirt really low, they wouldn't be allowed to do that. They would be literally squashed inside the bucket. I don't want that. I want them to be able to spread out and take advantage of the additional space, get the additional sun, all that sort of stuff. So now, what am I going to plant in these? Oh, I've been talking for months about planting more carrots, and I have a very nice container of Hercules carrots over here, but to be honest, it's time for me to harvest it. I should have planted this quite a while ago, probably 1.5 months ago, maybe 2. It just didn't happen. We had a lot going on in our life at that moment, and that means it didn't happen. So instead of beating myself up, I'm just going to get it done now. When people plant carrots in a garden environment, they usually plant them in a band. That means they'll choose to have a section, maybe 1 foot wide or something, and they'll plant very thickly. I admit I don't do that. I rarely do anything other than literally make holes and stick carrot seeds in it. Now, in a garden environment, I will be more casual about it. But in this kind of an environment, I'm dealing with a confined space. I really want them to succeed. I do not want to have to thin them. So that means I need to plant them a little farther apart. It does mean I will get a few less carrots. I can live with that. I'm only feeding 2 of us. I'm not trying to feed an army. So let me see what I have here. I have a little stack of seeds that I grabbed from the house. And I know there's several of these that are carrots. I'm sorting as I go. Had these all organized and then I proceeded to drop them before. Because, that happens. Okay, there's a Hercules. And there's a Mokum. Okay, eeny, meeny, miny, mo. The advantage to planting different kinds is that this one is done in 54 days. This one is done in 65 days. So they wouldn't be done at exactly the same moment. Whoops, and there they go again. Crazy. Anyway. And then I should have, if I was lucky, grabbed my little container. Just so happens I have a Mokum label here. Excellent. I actually have 2 of them. I could not find any Hercules labels anywhere around the house. I'm going to check and see if this is a Hercules label. And it is, so I'm going to steal it because I know that's Hercules over there. And I'm not likely to forget. So, what I'm going to do is plant these. Now, what is special about carrots? Carrots are not the easiest thing to grow. They are actually fussy in the sense that they require very constant humidity while they are sprouting and germinating. So, let's read the signs on the label and see what it says. It says, direct seeding. So 250 pellets sows 88 feet. No, not 88 feet, 8 feet. They're saying 1/4 to 1/2 inch deep. What I am going to do, so I want to use up all these guys. They're a little older. I'm pushing my luck with them. And I don't want to push my luck. So I'm going to do these. Once in a while I use a, let's see, I'm going to do these about every 2 inches. That's a generous space for them. And I'm going to literally just make holes with my finger. And then I'm stepping in and kind of offsetting a little bit so that I can squish in a couple extra there. And there's not a right or a wrong way to do this. It's just the way I chose to do it. So I'm going to literally just dump these little guys in there. I'm rolling my fingers to make one seed. In this case, these are pelleted seeds. I don't know if you can see that or not, but regular carrot seeds are rather small and they're funny looking. They're almost like a miniature caraway seed. But pelleted seeds are round, easy to see, and easy to drop into a hole. Now, these holes are deeper than they need to be. And I still have stuff left over. I think the solution to that is we're going to remove the concept of Hercules, and just do mokum. I want to finish the mokum seeds up. Like I say, they're getting a bit older, and I don't want to push my luck. I am literally just using them up, and that means they'll be a little closer together than I would usually put them. But to be honest, I'm usually a little generous, overly generous perhaps, in how far apart I put them. So I'm not too concerned. Now, as I mentioned, these seed holes were just a smidge deeper than they needed to be. Very lightly brush the stuff over the top and sort of pat it down, compressing the entire top. And that should actually bring these seeds to about where they need to be. Why do I compress the top of the soil? Because you want the soil to have good contact with the seeds so that there's moisture that's going to be transferred super easily to the seeds. Now, one of the things you'll see me do all the time when I do this is I always put my paper clip back on here. And I'm going to take my big paper clip and move everybody around in here so I know exactly what I've done. Now, what else do I need to do? I need to water. But I need to move my seeds first because I know that the watering can tends to slosh. And I do not want to put water on my seed bags. Seed. Not bags. Envelopes. That's the word I was looking for. Anyway. Now I am going to lightly sprinkle this. My goal is not to disturb the seeds. See the way it's going in the little drizzle right there? I don't actually like that. I prefer that first thing there first. And what I will do is I will come back here multiple times a day for the first week or so until these all sprout. Now, I don't know for sure how fast these are going to sprout because it's been cold. One of the reasons I actually waited to plant these guys was because we were down in the teens for, seemed like forever. It was a couple of weeks at night. It was not in the teens in here, but it was probably, anywhere from 25 to 35 in here at night. And I didn't want these guys to come up and then be damaged. I'm going to stab these sticks down here. And let me show you why. Because I'm going to cheat a little bit. I am going to take one of the saucers and flip it upside down on top of here. Now, why would I do that? To keep the moisture in. Simple. Just to keep the moisture in. And then I'm going to slide this guy out of the way. See, he's got friends over here. This guy over here is a carrot. These are Hercules carrots, all of them. And those are pretty much ready to be harvested. And I will probably harvest them in the next day or two. And that'll be great because it'll give me yet another pot to be able to use. So be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell, because we have lots of hints and tips that will make your gardening life easier. So until next time, bye. And be sure to brainstorm. You need to brainstorm to get your ducks in a row so you can figure out what you're doing. Bye.